Hey guys, today I'm going to teach you how you can build your own AI sales agent. I'll show you how you can issue custom quotes to customers who email you with product requests, help you visualize how this works. Basically, you're going to be receiving an email from a customer asking about specific products, and then it's going to generate an email draft like this one, where it's going to give more details about the products that the customer wants to order. So by the end of this video, you will know how to build an AI agent that analyzes your emails, checks your inventory, and then generates a draft email with a custom quote and product recommendations. This entire workflow runs in less than 30 seconds, so it's going to free up so much time from your sales team to generate more leads and get more customers. We're going to be using Composio to get your emails and generate drafts. We're going to be using Pinecone to make sure that your inventory list is searchable by LLMs. And finally, we're going to be using CrewAI to connect all of the AI agents together to build this workflow. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Vlad. I teach entrepreneurs how they can build AI agents to grow their companies. I release tutorials on this channel every week, so keep an eye on it. All of the code is available for free. You can find it in the comments. Finally, if you want to review your workflow or if you have any issues implementing this code, you can book a meeting with me below and I'll be happy to assist. All right, so now let's dive into the tutorial. Here's how the workflow works. There are 4 main steps. The first one is where we're going to be receiving the email, just like this one, where you get a product inquiry with product description. So I need 2 times the fleece hoodie gray large, potentially with the UPC code, which is the unique product code, 4 times the crew neck. And then the second part of the message is about the potential products that we could recommend. So what's the collection of athletic clothes? Then we're going to be analyzing that email. So we're going to be using CrewAI for that, where we're going to be finding if it's an existing product, if we have it in the inventory, if we have it in stock, if it's the right price, and so on. And then basically we're going to come up with products to address that need regarding the collection of athletic clothes. So this is the part where we're going to be analyzing the email. Then the third part is where we're going to be searching and finding the products in the database. So here it's fairly simple. We just have an Excel sheet with 10 different items that I just pushed to Pinecone. I have a more detailed video on how you can vectorize your information from your database. What I did here is I converted the information from the Google Sheet, and I'm going to walk you through all the details and how to set it up. The point is to make sure that instead of running structured queries using SQL, you can actually chat with your data and fetch the relevant information from your database. Finally, we're going to be generating a draft email where we're going to return the existing products. As you probably know, LLMs aren't that great at doing basic calculations, so I'm going to show you how you can create your custom tools to perform calculations, and then return a list of existing products along with their quantities, unit cost, and total value with the total quote for the inquiry that they reached out for. And then importantly, also, I'm going to show you how you can actually recommend products based on their needs. So here we actually found a product in the database called Athletic Socks Black Small with this unique product code at $8.25 per pack. So if they want to follow up, then again, you can go in circles and this agent is just continuously running. That's pretty much the workflow. So again, first step is receiving the email. Second step is analyzing that email to find the products. Then third is interacting with the database, identify those products that we can actually sell. And then finally, it's generating a draft, structuring all of that information that you can just send out if you're happy with it. Now I'm going to show you the code and how we can set it up. Before we dive into the code, just a quick reminder on what CrewAI is. CrewAI is a framework that allows you to connect different AI agents together to perform a specific workflow. Many of the Fortune 500 companies today use CrewAI and have different crews running in their day-to-day operations. The way it works is you coordinate a bunch of agents together who perform specific tasks, and together you're going to create a crew. So today we're going to be creating a crew and coordinating all these different agents. I'm going to teach you and show you how we can define specific tasks. So every single step that I showed you from the workflow here, those are specific tasks that specialized agents have performed or are performing. And then finally, I'm going to show you how you can kick it off. And especially in the case of this tutorial, because we're waiting for emails, I'm going to show you how you can listen for new emails and kickstart the process as soon as you have an email coming in. There's a lot of documentation about CrewAI that you can review as well. The second one is Composio. So Composio works a little bit like Zapier, but for AI agents. So I'm going to show you how you can very easily integrate with Gmail, generate drafts, receive emails using Composio. They are integrating with more tools every day. So here in this case, I can show you, but basically they have Gmail. So I'm using Composio's integration with Gmail to run this AI agent. And then finally, we're going to be using Pinecone. Pinecone is the vector database to build AI applications. And the reason we need to use that platform is to convert the structured data from the Excel sheet into data that we can actually query using LLMs. So by asking specific questions about products, You wouldn't be able to do that if everything was in an Excel sheet. So that's why we need. Those are the 3 tools we're going to be using. So now I'm going to show you the code and go over it step by step. All right, so right now I am on Cursor and I'm going to walk you through the Crew. This is the main sheet where I'm running the Crew. So in the Crew, like I said, we have a set of agents. I'm going to go over them in more depth, but basically you have the email processor receiving the emails, analyzing them. You have an agent analyzing the database. You have another one generating the quote, and I'm going to show you why this is important, but basically it's performing calculations. And then finally, we have this email draft generator who's going to actually generate the email to the relevant thread in your Gmail account or Outlook. Really depends on the integration you would like to have. And then, like I mentioned, each of these agents perform specific task. So here we have the process email task, which is converting the information in message into a structured output. And I'm going to tell you a bit more about how this works. So here it's basically describing the task, what should happen at each task. It's then specifying the Pydantic. So this is super helpful when you run when you work with agents. They're really good at analyzing messy data. So in this example, an email, and then by giving them like some clear instructions in the description, you can tell them, okay, use the unstructured data from the email and convert it into a super structured output. So here, list of items, before I move on too far, is list of items is this object. So this object is made of items and new items. So if we go back to our example here, it will be analyzing these products, right? So the existing ones. And then we have this other part in the email, which is about what's your collection of athletic clothes. So we need to handle this data differently. So here, the process email task, it's going to convert the email, right, as a list of items. Then it's going to perform the different checks in the database using a tool that connects to Pinecone to perform the specific actions. Then we have the generating quote task. So here it's basically going to be using the unit cost times the quantities that were passed in the email to then perform multiplications and then come up with the sum of all these values to generate the quote. And again, this is probably very straightforward to humans, but with LLMs, you have to be a bit more prescriptive on how to perform this task. And then finally, it's going to generate an email draft here where you're just explaining, providing examples on how to come up with the email. And then you're specifying, okay, so actually generate an email draft within the same thread ID as the one from which you received the email. Use the initial message as context to generate an email that makes sense. And then finally, what we have, this crew. So the scheduler crew. So it's maybe not the best name, but here you're basically saying, okay, all of these agents will perform all of these tasks. So the ones we just reviewed, and you're going to kickstart this crew as soon as we get an email. And this is just like a class function from Composio that allows you to listen to specific events. So the way this works is as soon as you get a new Gmail message, so all of this is basically integrated into Composio, but you have to specify it like the trigger name in Composio. You're going to extract information from the email. Then you're going to use this function called kickoff to kickstart the crew, where you're going to be passing the input parameters of Composio. And I'm going to show you maybe very quickly on Composio how to do that. But basically, this is what allows you to listen to every emails and start the process as soon as you get a new email. So very quickly, if we go over to Composio, I think it's important to show you how to set up listener events. So as you can see here, there's documentation that you can interact with. So basically you have this callback function that kickstarts, and then you have to define the trigger name. So Gmail new message, that's the one we're using. But there are different triggers that you can use, and you would just have to look through the documentation to pick the one that you need. But that's essentially how it works. Now I'm just going to dive deeper into the different tools that I have built specifically for this workflow to work. So like I said, we have this first agent who's the processor agent. This processor agent is going to use a range of tools. Those tools are actually all the ones connected to Composio. And the way you would do that is here I'm initializing it. So you're calling your Composio API key here, and then you can just define the different actions. So you have to specify that you want Gmail to create an email draft, and we already have the listener event. So there's actually one listener event and one action. These ones, actually, you can disregard them. I was using them in a different tutorial that you can also review. So this is basically the email processor agent. And then process email task, it's gonna return the information from the message into a list of items. If we go back to our example, we have those two products with unique product codes. So those are products that the customer may have already been ordering in the past. And then we have this new product or the collection of athletic clothes. So what you need to do here is convert the existing products with the product name as the description, the UPC code as the UPC code, and then the quantities. And then we have the new item, which you basically turn this into a query. So the question regarding the athletic products would be turned into a query. Everything is optional, as you can see, because obviously in your emails, your clients may send you different stuff. As soon as you have this information as structured output, you're going to be calling this second agent, who is the database checker. So this agent is going to perform an action interacting with Pinecone. And so let me go over this task because I think there's a lot to unwrap. So when you interact with Pinecone, you are querying the database, and then it's gonna give a score to the most relevant records, and then you can define how many records you want to fetch every time you run the query. So as you can see here, we are preparing the query parameters where we are calling the collection from Pinecone. So if I go over it again, so it's gonna call this collection, which is here. In my environmental variables, it's gonna call this environment. And it's going to pass a query. So it's going to ask about like athletic products in our example. It's going to return the most relevant product, but you can also define top 2, top 3, top 4, whatever. And then you also want to pass metadata. And the reason we're passing this metadata is when you have like a large database, you want to be able to perform and apply filters to the results, because otherwise it's just going to be a bit like of a finger in the air or like a needle in a haystack, where it's going to return your results, but it doesn't have enough context to actually come up with something relevant. To do that, you need to apply filters. And so we're going to strip out irrelevant information. Here we are stripping out with filters like UPC code. So if the client returns or is sending a UPC code in the email, we can just find the relevant result immediately. If the client is asking about a specific product quantity, so if they want to order like 300 products, we can actually apply a filter, which is quantity available or unit cost. It works the same. And then filter signs. Here we have a set of signs. So in this case, we're keeping it simple, but you're using the filter, which is quantity available. And then it could be like, okay, I need 250 products. So it's going to be quantity available greater than, and then it's going to set in the value as 200. So it's going to return all the athletic products where the quantity available is greater than 200, right? And it's going to do this dynamically based on the information from the email. And then this is the output that it's going to return. So it's going to return the item description. So item description is this column. Then it's going to return the UPC code. As you can see, UPC code, quantity available, unit cost, and then an error message if we don't get it. So let me just show you very quickly how this tool works. So what are your athletic clothes? This is basically like the query that we'll be having. Let's say filter column is quantity available greater than. So if we go over here, we can see that we have two products. So we have 188 and 440. So if we ask about something that where the quantity available is greater than 200, it should return us only one product. Okay, so return just one product, which is Athletic Socks Black. And like we said, Athletic Socks Black has got 440, whereas here it's 188. So now that we know how the tool works, I can just hide this because we're going to be using the tool in the crew. So check database task. Here we're basically just explaining how to interact with the database. So it's pretty much the same. So if you have a regular item, you should actually always look for the UPC code filter as a minimum requirement with the equal sign. It's just a workaround to handle and deal with the structured data. However, with new items, you want to pass as the query the description of the new item. And then the filter column should be depending on whatever the customer is asking for. So if the customer is sending an email, send me your collection of athletic clothes that are not costing more than $8 per unit, then it would apply the unit cost filter to the metadata. It's going to filter out anything that is irrelevant and then generate a list of recommendations to meet the needs of the client. You could do that with quantity available, and then there are the different signs and so on. This is basically where you configure the task depending on how you want to perform the operations in your database. And so let's just go back to the workflow to make sure that we're not losing track. So now we looked at 3 major steps in the entire workflow. So we learned how we can receive emails using Composio and then analyze those emails, right? So we are turning this email, we're stripping out and categorizing product requests. So we have existing products and then new products. And then finally, we are going into Pinecone to then come up with product recommendations based on the needs that they have, but also return products that they want, right? So those are like the three major steps, which are like the hardest in the workflow. So congrats for being here until now. Now I'm going to go over how we can actually go from understanding the products that the clients want and then generate a draft email, perform the calculations to then come up with a final quote with the total amount. So this is the next step. So generate quote task. So this is just fairly straightforward, but it's going to be dealing with a list of products, right? With their units, the quantity available, like the quantities that the customers want, and the unit cost. And then it's just going to use this multiplication tool, which is just explaining the LLM how to perform specific actions. So it's going to pass as an input the first number and the second number, and then it's going to be up to the LLM to actually define what are those two numbers. And then it's just going to multiply them. This is just like a workaround solution to deal with multiplications in your AI agents. So multiply the quantity and the unit cost of each item to get the value of the item, and then summing up the values to get the total quote. It's not even super clear the way I phrased it, but it actually works. So it's good enough for now. Then it's going to return the quote object. Quote is the sum of the values of the items from the orderable items objects. We didn't go over each of them, but generally the way I like to do it is by structuring specific outputs for each task so that you can just reuse it better and it's more predictable. So as soon as we get items from the Pinecone task, I'm basically asking for a list of returned items. So if I just go over check database task, so this is the one where we're interacting with the Pinecone tool. It's returning this orderable items object. So orderable items is a list of returned items. Returned items is a list of returned item objects. So every time that it's fetching some data from the Pinecone database, it's going to try to populate these fields, right? So unit cost, quantity available, quantity, which is what the customer has asked for, UPC, item description. So it's important also to distinguish between the two. This is what the customer wants. This is what we have. And then the value, because I'm setting all the values as optional, they can stay empty until we actually perform the action to come up with the value. So here it's just the quantity times the unit cost. So we're basically multiplying all the values together. And then finally, once the email draft that has been generated, it's actually going to push that email as a draft in my Gmail account. So sometimes like these agents don't need to perform like super crazy actions, but it's important to break down the task into the manageable tasks so that the agents don't get confused and lost. And that's it. So congrats for sticking around until now. Now I'm just going to show you live how this works, and hopefully it's going to work, and then we can just comment the results. All right, so let's try to kickstart the workflow. Can I hide that? Okay, so now it's listening to an email. I'm not going to overcomplicate things. I'm just going to reuse the same email here. Product inquiry. We are asking about two fleece hoodie gray large with a unique product code and 4 times a crew neck. And then finally, we're also asking about the collection of athletic clothes, right? So we're keeping it simple. Now we're sending the email. So let's see. I'm just going to use the timer to check how long the crew lasts as soon as we get the email. All right, so now we just received the email. So I'm starting the timer. As you can see, we're processing the email. Those are the results coming from the database. So you can see filter column UPC code, filter value, so it's passing the UPC code. It did it again. It did it a third time for the recommendations about athletic socks, right? So it returned those 3 products, athletic socks, crew neck, fleece. Then it's generating the quote. So number 2, number 1, so 2 times the unit price, basically. It's calculating the value. Tool output 57, so quote 100 email. Okay, so the email draft has been generated. Let's see. So we got the email. Let's check. So this is the last one. Perfect. So it took us pretty much like a minute to generate this email with the total value. So like we said, the quote 187 and 50 cents with the 2 products, and it did all of that by contextualizing the information as well about the athletic socks. So yeah, very impressive, because now you're essentially in the same thread with the body of the email. You can just send it over if you feel comfortable. As part of another tutorial, I'm thinking about integrating with Stripe, where based on the quote amount, you can issue a payment link so that customers can immediately pay for the products. This would save up so much time. You would be able to convert a lot more customers because they're probably sending those same emails to a bunch of different suppliers. So the faster you respond and the more likely you are to win those deals. I think it works for any inbound sales inquiries or any inquiries that you get via email, where your team is spending way too much time doing some data manipulation to actually reply to those emails. The script is available in the comment section. I have more videos with deep dives into CrewAI, Composio, Pinecone on my channel, so feel free to check them out. Otherwise, I'm going to see you soon with another tutorial on how you can use AI agents in your business. Bye.